Hello everyone, my name is Scott Wilhite. This is a video to talk about David Rakow and Judge David Rakow in Rockwall, Texas. One of the many people of influence then in 2006 and now that helped Dusty Miller at the time get away with serial sex crimes against Rockwall High School students. Anyway, this Substack or YouTube channel I created for the purpose of bringing Dusty Broadfoot is her name now. She's married to a Broadfoot. I can't remember her husband's name, but I will later because we'll talk about him later. This channel and this Substack is for the purpose of bringing her to justice by offering a $250,000 reward, and that is to bring justice for her serial sexual assaults against the high school students. In a weird way, I'm a victim of some of those crimes too. I didn't know about it at the time. They were recorded on video. I found out later accidentally. That's how Rakow becomes involved. So when I did find out back in 2007, I wasn't quiet about it, but I was screaming about the wrong thing, which was me. Nobody cares about justice for me. People do care about when adults. Dusty was 27 years old when she was having orgies with high school students. When I say orgies, there's probably 2, 3, or 4 minors involved. So it's not like 20 high school students in her garage, although there could be. I'm assuming there's about anywhere from 2 to 4, but many more would have known because high school students can't keep a secret. At any rate, so by offering $250,000, and a lot of thought went into that number, the story itself, once it starts to the sweater starts to unthread, it'll be big. Hopefully not for me. I don't care. I'm prepared for 4 billion to know this, but in a perfect world, only one person sees one of these videos that has information, and then they find the email address so they can send a tip and receive anonymously tip and receive the $250,000 reward, and justice brought to justice. Even if that one person was one of the minors that Dusty had sex with back then, Dusty and or Tony Corsi, because they both did. By the way, this is Reagan Corsi's mom. Tony is Reagan Corsi's biological father. Reagan Corsi is apparently a popular social media influencer. I don't know exactly what that means, but I've just discovered that she's become famous. Good for her. This is nothing against Reagan Corsi. In fact, Reagan and her brother Preston were victims, collateral victims of what their mother did in haunting ways a few times, especially with Preston. I remember it vividly to this day, the night that one event happened. So that's what this Substack is for, and the YouTube channel, and these messages. In order to, this one in particular is, if it doesn't really make sense if I'm just offering $250,000 to solve sex crimes, serial sex crimes, involving minors in Rockwall, Texas that I don't know. Or if I offer $250,000, it sounds bad faith if I'm just offering it to solve crimes that I was a victim of, even though that happens. And that is a byproduct of what I'm doing. But I've kind of figured out after 19 years that in order to resolve this, I need to bring attention to the most conscious, shocking element of what she did. And it is a conscious shocker. It's a legal term. Shocks the conscious. It shocks what she did and what Tony did, and possibly what her current husband, Broadfoot, was aware of, at least, if wasn't involved at the end. What they did it shocks the conscious, as kind of a term used in law, and it means what it says. It's like a what the fuck moment. Well, that's how serious what Dusty did, and why $250,000 will make sense. And How she got away with it is another reason why the $250,000 is reasonable. And David Rakow is one of the people in that story. As I've mentioned in other writings on this post, she worked for Galen Ray Sumrow, who is the elected district attorney of Rockwall County before this happened. And so she was friends with Galen Ray Sumrow. She became somehow personally affiliated with a disgraced former Texas Ranger named Lane Aiken. And some of these people are going to watch this and are on high alert because they have very, very thin skin. Lane Aiken has the thinnest skin of every one of them, which I love. Lane, a.k.a. Stalker, Texas Ranger. He was promoted briefly to a lieutenant out of the Garland, Texas Ranger office. Then he did something bad and he got bumped down to, street cop ranger. And he got mad and he quit. Then he went to work for the phone company. But he grew up with Lane Aiken, north of Greenville, Texas. And Dusty and Aiken grew up with Sumrow, north of Greenville. So they were buds their whole life. And Dusty then, and understand, Dusty is a little tart. She tricked a Hooters patron into buying her fake boobs when she worked there as a server, and then immediately had him banned. It maliciously stole $4,000 or $5,000 from him to get breast jobs, and then, according to her, the next day she had him banned from coming to the restaurant. This is well before I knew her. In fact, when she told me this, it was too late, or I probably would not have continued the relationship with her. But for anyone who knows her, because there will be some people who know her, who watches this, who have been told, Dusty and I have a history. So this is not an avoid. And people that in her circle, who may be new to her circle, may have heard things from her, may watch this, and just know she is a fucking sociopath of Patrick Bateman level. To the point where she points at herself when she has sex. Not in the mirror. And there's video of it. Twice, now that I think about it. Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. Dusty is that character, not the murder part, but the sociopath, the sociopathy of Patrick Bateman. She literally looks at herself in the mirror while she's having sex, while she's raping someone, and gives herself a congratulatory grin. I swear to God Almighty who rose yesterday. That is the truth. That is Dusty Broadfoot. So if you're in her little circle, you've heard of things, that's true. The Hooters, tricking the Hooters patron into buying her boobs first, that's true too. I have no doubt she's with the man she's with now because he has deep pockets, and I don't know what she's done over the past 20 years, but it's likely she has not excelled in a career that has made her any money, if she worked at all. Well, she's going to live the rest of her life as a known sociopathic serial rapist of minors. And one way she was able to get away with that was through the help of David Rakow. November 5th, 2006, the videotapes that I spoke of that she did these things on. There's other things on those videotapes. And on that night, I didn't know what was on those tapes, other than sex with me, with her. We were living together. We dated for 18 months. I lived there for about a year on Sycamore Lane in Rockwall. And we recorded herself having sex. Her camcorder. And in fact, she claims that those videotapes are hers. She claims this on a 911 call she made that night. The first words out of, I still had the 911 call, the audio of it. First words out of her mouth were, "My ex-boyfriend is taking my things and pushing me around." Well, that's true. I confess. Well, sort of. The things she's talking about are the videotapes. I started to get my daughter ready in Rockwall, in the house Dusty and I were living in, around 7 o'clock that Sunday night. Some of my daughter's things were in Dusty's back, in her trunk, including the box of videotapes. So when I started getting my daughter ready, Dusty had the keys to her trunk, so I went and got the keys. Dusty forgot that those tapes were in the trunk. And Dusty and I were having problems. I had already caught her cheating with the guy she's married to now. She was doing some weird shit. I'll get into that later. But I was looking for an apartment to move out, but she was still trying to play both sides of the fence. She was trying to talk me into, she was playing me to keep me there long enough to do a hate crime that happened on October 28th. And she recorded it. 2 camcorders recorded it. I have one of the tapes. I'm not kidding. Hate crime. Okay. So that night, I went to go get the key from Dusty for her trunk. Dusty forgot those tapes were in her trunk. And I walk out to the garage. I open her trunk. I grab the box of tapes. Or I grab my daughter's things, put them in my trunk right beside Dusty's car. And I saw the box of tapes and I said, oh, hey, there's those tapes of me in very compromising situations. There's other things on them too that I needed. But I said, there's the videotapes. The videotapes. There was no question about what was on these videotapes as far as the sex with me and Dusty. There was also me not being able to pick up my girls in McKinney every other weekend because my ex-wife was tampering with visitation. So I needed those for a lawsuit I had filed against my ex-wife. It really didn't have anything to do with this. But I saw the tapes. I said, there's the tapes. So I took them. I'm by myself in the garage. I took the box of tapes, I put them in my trunk, shut the trunk, and I had my keys to my car, and you couldn't get in my trunk. I think the doors were unlocked, but there's a button, I think, in the door jamb or somewhere. You have to know exactly where the button is to unlock the trunk in order to get to the trunk without the keys. So I had the keys in my hand. I walk in the house to get my daughter to put her in the car to go. And between me shutting the trunk and getting to the house, actually going to the bedroom, I walked from my trunk into the house, into the master bedroom, where all the sex crimes took place, and grabbed the garage door opener off the end table, the table beside the bed, started to walk back out of the master bedroom. And at that time, or a few seconds later, is when Dusty realized she had given me the keys to where those tapes were. And Dusty knew what was on those tapes. And she knew that I didn't know what was on those tapes. And of course, I didn't know what was on those tapes, other than those other embarrassing things. So Dusty physically assaults me in the bedroom, in front of my daughter, in front of Reagan, and in front of Preston. And she holds me there for about 3 or 4 minutes, trying to pull the keys away from my hand. So what was assault, and she scratched me, so it's assault and battery, turns into aggravated kidnapping. And here's why. She prevented me from leaving where I was. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time for someone to do that for it to rise to kidnapping. And she did. She was trying to keep me from leaving because, according to her, 2 minutes later when she calls 911, I am taking her things. Now, when she's physically assaulting me, we were still technically boyfriend-girlfriend. She lies on the 911 call 2 minutes later and says, my ex-boyfriend. So she's broken up with me without telling me, between the bedroom and the landline in my office and the other side of the house where she calls 911. But she holds me in the bedroom for about 3 minutes in front of my daughter and Reagan and Preston. My daughter drew a map of it and showed the assistant district attorney in Rockwall. And because Dusty knows she's keeping me there in order to hide or get away with another crime, that's what makes it aggravated. I didn't know that at the time. It took me many, many years of formal education, ending with a grad degree a year ago next month, to understand that that's what she did, or to learn that that's what she did, aggravated kidnapping. And this is the first night. I hadn't even got to David Rakow yet, and I'm 17 minutes in. But for those people who are in Dusty's circle, who may know about Dusty's history and it's some dark, mysterious thing, these are the details. So Dusty calls 911, lies, and I got my daughter and I got my car and I left. But I knew the police were coming. And at that time, I had never been in trouble before. No arrest for crime, or since. But I was at night. None of my family, we're not a crime family. Her family is the nostalgia de la boue. So I leave with my daughter, and I intentionally go the obvious way from her house on Sycamore Lane towards McKinney. I could have gone some back ways and probably avoided the police, which I should have done. But I really didn't have anything to hide. And I sort of wanted them to pull me over so I could tell them what Dusty had done. I had the tapes in the car. I got away with the tapes. But she'd scratched me and she'd assaulted me, and I knew that. My daughter knew that. So the police, sure enough, saw me on my way out of town, pulled me over, and I was charged with a Class C assault and interfering with a 911 call. I didn't interfere with a 911 call, but Dusty lied and said I did. And the interfere with a 911 call is either a Class A or a Class B misdemeanor. So that knocks that charge up to the district attorney's office, where Dusty's friends with every employee there. And this is Rockwall County, Texas, smallest county in Texas. And at that time, there may have been 10 total people who worked in the office. There may have been 4 or 5 attorneys, included the elected attorney, Galen Sumrow, who a year later was convicted of stealing from the state and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Or 17 years, I think. Remember, that's Stalker Texas Ranger's boyhood friend. So I'm arrested, charged with that. I bond out. Well, Dusty starts lying to try to revoke my bond. And my assigned judge is David Rakow. Just misdemeanors. In fact, the Class C misdemeanor wasn't even handled by Rakow. It was handled by some municipal. It all resulted in a fine because they alleged that I just spoke aggressively to her or threatening to her. No touching. Well, I had injury. I showed the police officer, took a picture of it, didn't matter. 12 police officers came out for Dusty's call for a misdemeanor. Class C misdemeanor. Because it wasn't until the cops got there that Dusty started lying about the 911 call. She was trying to call her stepdad from her cell phone, and I stopped her and said, no, call 911. We had a landline. If she knew her stepdad's phone number, who lived 300 yards away, and he and I were about the same age. According to Dusty, he was going to come whip my ass. I didn't like that idea, so I told her forcefully, aggressively, no, call, and I did take her cell phone out of her hand and said, call 911 from the office, because it had, there's a long story I'll get into later, but I worked for the phone company then, and my entire team of 23 very highly qualified, specialized technicians installed and maintained every PSAP in Dallas and contiguous counties, including Rockwall. You can Google PSAP, P-S-A-P, and you'll learn what that is. So I knew how 911 worked. If she calls 911 from the office, it tells the police exactly where we were. 3,000 block of Sycamore. That's what I wanted. So she calls, I heard her lie, I leave with my daughter. They pull me over, they arrest me, I bond out. Dusty starts trying to violate my bond. Because remember, Dusty knew her serial rape orgies were on those videos, even though I didn't at that time. This is November 2006. She started with telling Preston, her oldest, or she started by telling the assistant district attorney that Preston told her that I drove to her house on Sycamore in December sometime during the day, parked my car, got out of the car, ran up, and just banged on her garage door, and then went and got in my car and drove off. I don't hold this against Preston. Preston's he was a nice kid then, very smart, as I recall. Very smart. And even if he said that, it's hard to imagine he would make something like that up. But that happened in December. I don't hold it against Preston. I don't hold anything against Reagan either. They were kids. It's their mother that's the problem. So this was in December. Dusty tried to revoke my bond. She said that she had a protective order at that time, by that time. So me driving to her house would have violated the protective order and violated my bond. Well, it didn't work. Rakow's the judge. Remember this. So that's December. January rolls around, and I have to go to trial for what's called a reset hearing every month, which is unheard of in misdemeanor. But Rakow had been an assistant district attorney for the Rockwall County District Attorney's Office when Dusty worked there. So they were friends. But, I don't know that Rakow was sort of conspiring in these orgies with minors with Dusty. But if I were a police detective, I know he's one of the first person in the orbit I'm going to ask, because he's an associate and has a personal relationship with Dusty, which is proven, which he admits to. Well, I'm going to get to. But I don't have any animus necessarily against Rakow. He's just a typical dirty judge doing typical dirty things in a void. If he doesn't know me from Adam, and he doesn't know Dusty from Adam, and some random person who followed my same path with the same charges makes his way through his court in a void, in a vacuum, basically. Judges do these sorts of things all the time. Maybe not as egregious. You'll learn after I get there. But without everything else, Rakow could just chalk it. I could just chalk it up to Rakow, to a judge being a typical dirty judge. I wouldn't trust Rakow with my kids, notwithstanding what Dusty did to other kids. Rakow's a liar. That's the point of this. I don't have any animus against him. It's been too long. And as far as I know, he's not the one that's committing the sex crimes with Dusty. If he is, fuck him. So January comes around. I have a hearing with him, reset hearing. I go with my attorney. It's reset. February comes around, and it's reset. The next hearing is March. I get a subpoena. I'll cover this in another video. Dusty strung out on methamphetamine in May of 2006. For about 4 days straight, she didn't sleep. She hired a Dallas cop to be a kind of a live-in security, hybrid live-in tenant. She managed apartments. I forget the name of the company that owned the apartments. Lincoln Property is who she worked for. But the owners were somebody else in Dallas. Anyway, Dusty, in May 2006, she hires a cop with Shortman syndrome, almost literally. He had a chip on his shoulder. When she was strung out on meth and awake on a bender for 4 or 5 days. And a week later, this cop kills a guest of a tenant, shoots him in the back on the apartment complex, on the property, because according to the cop, the tenant, the guy who lived there, and that other guy who got shot, his guest, were making too much noise. It was whatever the first holiday of the summer is, Memorial or Labor, whatever one comes first. It was that weekend, and the apartment tenant invited a guest over, and about midnight, 1 a.m., they're making some noise on the balcony. One of the neighbors called, and that cop who had been there a week, who Dusty had hired after having been strung out on meth for 4 days, walks out there and gets in an argument with the guy who was about 6'1" or 6'2", and this guy's about 4'9", and the cop shoots him in the back. Dusty Lincoln Property gets sued for that, for wrongful death, along with the city of Dallas. I think they started with $10 million. So $250,000 reward should start sounding reasonable, because this is big money type of crimes that are going on. And Rakow assisted in covering them up. I'm getting to it, I promise. I know I'm 26 minutes in. But so Lincoln's getting sued, and I get a subpoena because I made it known to the attorneys who were suing Lincoln Property and the city of Dallas that Dusty not only was addicted to meth, and not only did I have video of her smoking meth, which I knew I did on those tapes, but that a Good Samaritan, I knew this from knowing Dusty, in 2005 had called Lincoln Property and reported Dusty for being addicted to meth, which she was. And Lincoln Property did not investigate their employee, Dusty Miller, at the time, Dusty Corsi at the time, Reagan's mom. So they just blew it off. They blew the tip from the Good Samaritan. There's a funny story behind the Good Samaritan. But Lincoln Property didn't do anything about it, just ignored it. Dusty kept on working. So a year later, after not being investigated by Lincoln Property, and after a 4-day bender on meth, Dusty hires the guy who 7 days later innocently shoots wrongfully a guest of a tenant. And I let the attorneys know, because Dusty was the state's star witness against me. She needed to be discredited. I had video of her smoking meth that would be beneficial to the plaintiffs or the parents of the guy who got shot, along with the other details about Lincoln not investigating her. So I got a subpoena for the video clip of Dusty smoking meth on May 21st, 2006. That's when I first looked at the videos after December. I never looked at them. Even though they had sex recorded of me and Dusty having sex, look at me. I'm not a porn star. I'm not Patrick Bateman. I'm not Dusty Miller. I don't look in the mirror and grin while I'm having sex with someone else. Dusty did. So I had no reason to look at these tapes until I get a subpoena to clip out this one video of Dusty smoking meth on May 21st. And I shit you not, 15 feet from here, I've got a desk with a computer on it, and that's where I was sitting when I'm fast forwarding through to get to where her smoking meth, and boom, Dusty leans from one side of the camera to the other and starts giving oral sex to a high school student. She had sent me to the store to buy cigarettes for her. This is 5 a.m. in the morning, May 21st, 2006. And while I'm gone to get cigarettes, 2 or 3, if not 3 or 4 high school students walk into the bedroom where she and I had been having sex. And she leans over and starts giving one of them oral sex on camera or being recorded. And that's what I see as I'm making my way to where she's smoking meth. I freaked the fuck out. And then I started looking at all the videotapes and found everything she had done. On that night, one of them had a gun, and it was caught. It was caught just like that, across the camera, actually behind me. I'm about from here to the camera lens, and someone behind me waves their hand with a gun behind my head as I'm looking at the camera. That was on May 21st. Another night, a month later, in June, that night I can't prove there was a gun, but they did whisper to Dusty as Dusty and I were engaging in foreplay, and Dusty's holding the camcorder. And I asked Dusty, I whisper a question to Dusty, sort of a throwaway question, you know, we're in sort of that kind of a moment, and I whisper something to Dusty, and less than 15 feet away, someone whispers to her, "So we can murder him." Recorded. This is Dusty. Then in October, there was another gun that was caught on the camera. That's what I found in March. And I'm charged with crimes by Dusty, misdemeanor crimes with Dusty. And I knew her personal friend was Galen Ray Sumrow. And even though Sumrow wasn't the attorney prosecuting my case, one of his weird assistant district attorneys who had not been hired, but had been appointed in a weird way. And apparently no lawyers in Rockwall really liked her because they felt like she cheated her way into that position. They didn't feel like she earned it. And she didn't. She hadn't. And she was just a nasty. There were actually at trial, there was her, very obese, very grotesque appearing. And then there was a sort of a normal ADA from Kaufman that I don't think, who was from Kaufman, who grew up there, but may have lived in Rockwall, I don't know, but did work for Galen Ray Sumrow. She probably didn't know Dusty when Dusty worked there, but, you know, normal ADA. No animosity against her, not really any animosity against the grotesque ADA, but there was something bizarre about her. She helped Dusty cover these up. I don't know about the little girl from Kaufman. Rakow's the judge. In March, Dusty chases me to work. We drive the same road, I-30, to downtown Dallas between 8:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning. And Dusty planned to wait for me to drive past that main road in Rockwall, because I came from outside of Rockwall. And then she, on the service road, when she spotted me, she nails it and tries to catch up with me with a camera to try to take my picture to show that I violated the protective order again. And I would have my bond revoked. And this is right around the same time I discovered what she had done on the videotapes. So this is March. Then the hearing in March, Rakow's the judge. And I didn't know at the time that Dusty had a personal relationship with Rakow. I didn't know they knew each other. But I'd already been told, I was on my second attorney by then, and I told my attorney, both of them, file a fucking motion to recuse the DA and the judge and file for a venue change. They just blew me off. I'm just a white beater to them. Sadly, that's how it goes in domestic violence allegations. And I was not quiet about it. In fact, I went through 2 more attorneys. Everyone I told file a motion to recuse, both the district attorney. One attorney said, when I told him that Dusty's friends with the DA, he said, well, you know, that just means that they'll do a better job for her. Okay. Paul, he's from Plano. I will remember his name for another video. He may not be practicing anymore, but I would never hire him. I'll remember his name later. So at the hearing in March, Dusty shows up as a witness to testify that I broke the restraining order by getting close to her in traffic, which was a lie, because I saw her when I drove past that main road, Ridge Road, and as soon as I saw her, I floored it, because I knew that if I got next to her in traffic, even though we were dealing with flip phones, I didn't know she actually was prepared. She brought not a camcorder, but a little handheld digital camera with her, which she would have never had with her. But that day she was trying to violate my bond. She knew sex crimes were on those tapes. So she's trying to put me in jail to somehow get the tapes. She tried to extort the tapes or bribe the tapes from me the night I bonded out by calling my sister-in-law and telling my sister-in-law, this was November 6th, Monday night, or 7th, whatever that night was, and told my sister, listen, if he'll take those tapes and put them on my front porch on Sycamore Lane, which I already had the protective order against me. That would violate the protective order to begin with. Dusty had the authority to act on the DA's behalf, her friend Galen Sumrow, and told my sister-in-law, if he will take those tapes and put them on my front porch, I'll drop the charges tomorrow. Now, at the time, I didn't know anything about crime or criminal charges or anything, but within a month, I knew that she may have just been saying that she would just stop. She would say, oh, it was a misunderstanding. But now I'm pretty sure that she knew she had the authority to call off the charges because she was friends with Sumrow, the district attorney. So that's bribery. And Sumrow had a history of bribing. And if you don't believe me, ask the fat fucker named Carl Osselbrook, who was the chief of police for Rockwall at the time, who then went to work as the city manager of Rowlett or Roy City, whatever that little podunk town is just east of Rockwall. After Sumrow was sentenced to prison, WFAA, Channel 8 out of Dallas, interviews Osselbrook, who's still chief of police of Rockwall, about working with Sumrow as DA. And one of the anecdotes that Alsobrook gave in 2008 to WFAA. This is all, I'm not telling you anything that I can't prove. Alsobrook tells, I saw this on TV. Alsobrook tells Channel 8, the reporter, oh yeah, Alsobrook's his fat fucking dirty cop. Oh yeah, I remember when I first started as a jailer in Rockwall for the sheriff, and I was at the county jail, and we had an inmate locked up in the back that had been charged with something that seemed flimsy, and this is kind of also giggling or laughing or making light of, oh, they finally caught a bad guy. It's been around forever. Well, Alsobrook's saying that Sumrow walks in the jail as the DA then, when Alsobrook first started. And according to Alsobrook, Sumrow got his way down into the cell where the inmate, where the detainee was, charged with whatever, and had a secret conversation. Galen Ray Sumrow had a secret conversation with the inmate, and then came out and left. This is Alsobrook's memory when he's telling old war stories to Channel 8. And somehow Alsobrook says, well, he says that he does remember that very soon thereafter, there was a parcel of land or a plot of land that was in the inmate's name that was transferred then to Sumrow's name, and the charges were dropped. That's bribery. This was 2007 or 8 when Alsobrook told Channel 8 that. He was a jailer for the Rockwall County Sheriff. He's telling I assume a factual story that he didn't make up out of thin fucking air or his 350-pound gut. So we're going to take it at face value that Sumrow wanted the land, had false charges brought up against the guy, then told him, look, if you will give me your land, I'll drop the charges, which Alsobrook said happened. That would have been 10, 15, or 20 years before 2007. Alsobrook, although a jailer, he's telling this story factually, but he's also admitting that he saw a crime happen and didn't do anything about it. And didn't do anything about it for so long that after a career starting as a jailer, all the way to chief of police of Rockwall when he's telling this story, oh yeah, we all knew Sumrow was a crook. Here's evidence of him being a crook when I first started as a jailer. I'm now chief of police, and I never did anything about it because I'm a dirty cop. That's Alsobrook. Fuck you, Alsobrook. These are Dusty's friends. Dusty knew Alsobrook. Dusty worked for Sumrow in the late 90s. So I knew that Dusty had that kind of leverage with these people in power. Little did I know Rakow was an assistant district attorney in the late 90s, 2000, somewhere around there, when Dusty worked there. I didn't know that the first 12 months after I was charged with, falsely charged from Dusty. So in March, when she does that, she tries to revoke my bond, she takes a picture of the back of my car in traffic. Let me back up. So I see Dusty on the service road. I step on it, and this is 8:30, 8:40 a.m. So the 7 to 8 a.m. traffic is already simmered down a little bit. And from Ridge Road to Dolphin Road, I could maintain the very minimum 90 miles an hour, and did until Dolphin Road. And I remember not looking in my rearview mirror. I'm looking ahead because I'm really going 100 miles an hour on Interstate 30 during rush hour until I couldn't go that fast anymore. So I need to make sure that I'm looking, I've got sort of the geometry brain going, or the algebra brain, so I know how fast I need to stop and move and all that. So as soon as I get to Dolphin or close, I look up in my rearview mirror, and there she is. So she did the same thing without me knowing. She's still behind me. I call 911. I look in the mirror. She's taking a picture with that stupid fucking digital camera. And then she puts the phone to her ear. She calls 911. 6 Dallas police, I'll tell this for another story, but 6 Dallas, I don't get arrested. In fact, what the Dallas police told me was they're going to arrest her that morning. I went to my work, and because I'd called 911, they showed up and they took my report, and apparently they found Dusty and stopped somewhere while she was en route to her work, took her story. Simultaneously, I'm telling them what happened in front of 4100 Bryan. She's telling her cop what happened wherever she was. And my cop walks away, says, okay, give me a second. He walks away. 2 or 3 minutes, comes back. He says, okay, you can go on in. We're going to arrest the person on the other side. I breathed a sigh of relief. I thought, thank God this nightmare is over. I can't remember if I knew if I had discussed, if that was before or after March 14th, but it was early March. It could have been late February. But I go into work. They didn't file charges. But at the next hearing, Dusty shows up in Rockwall. And it's just a reset hearing, except for she's going to try and revoke my bond by saying that I chased her to work. 4100 Bryan is a tandem. It's a mid-rise, ancient phone company building. It used to be South Australia Telephone. My grandmother worked there as an operator. My mother worked there part-time as an operator in the 50s. I worked there. My son has worked across the street at that phone company building. We're a multi-generational phone company. And at the time, I was a network manager for SBC. It was South Australia Telephone, then SBC, then AT&T. I was a network manager for the 2000s. I knew how the network worked, including cell phone towers. So when Dusty's called as a witness this March in front of Rakow, the ADA calls her and says, did Mr. Wellhite chase to work? Yes. Do you have a picture of it? Yes, here it is. And ADA sits down. My attorney gets up and says, Miss Miller, do you understand? Do you understand that's a picture of the back of Mr. Wellhite's car? And the entire courtroom laughs. I'm not kidding. It's full on whatever the hearing reset days are, because there's a bunch of people charged with misdemeanors that are waiting to be reset or adjudicated. So it's a bunch of people charged with crimes. They're not, a bunch of people who hate the government, don't trust the government, thinks they're full of shit. Little did I know, they were all right. They were all correct. Well, when they said, when my attorney asked Dusty, you do realize that's the back of his car, they laughed. But I had told my attorney the night before that not only did I not chase her to work, that she chased me, and that she had a cell phone, and that the number of cell towers, the density of cell phones between Ridge Road and downtown Dallas along I-30 would be so great that I could tell within 100 feet accuracy of where she was and where I was at all time, and that I could animate it on a map. Cell phone location data by using triangulation. I'm a phone company expert. I knew this. My attorney didn't know it. He may have heard of it. This is 2007. Using triangulation to pinpoint people was pretty new. E911 was in the late 90s and early 2000s. I helped usher that into reality. E911 means enhanced 911. Enhanced 911 means that when someone calls they fall off a tractor and they run over themselves and they've got a cell phone, nowhere, and they can't tell the 911 dispatcher where they are, but they can call 911. E911 helps the dispatcher know a general proximity of where someone is. So it added location to 911 calls. Well, in addition to that, it was before GPS was integrated so much into the newer smartphones. But then you could use, if you had a whole bunch of towers, you could kind of zero in on where a cell phone was. I knew that if I could subpoena her cell phone records and I could get mine, I could tell you within 200 feet, because I could 100 feet accuracy with mine, 100 feet with hers. And I guarantee you she was not within 1,500, 2,000 feet with me for the majority of time. It would have only been at the very end close to Dolphin Road that she would have caught up with me. And that I could show that. I was a data analyst at the phone company. In fact, I had a certification that was called Ask Me, ASKME, which stood for Acquisition of Statistical Knowledge. I was lower management. And so the idea was that anybody, my director or staff or a sort of a board level executive could ask me anything about anything going on with the phone company, and I could run a SQL report, pull it out and put it into a report and make it look pretty and show anyone. And one of the databases that I became certified in was ArcGIS. Map, 911 uses maps. but I didn't really care about that service. I was interested in geolocation, in ARC, but the phone company used map to identify all their assets across the world. That's how we operated, was where everything was, where our central offices were, where our data centers were, where our cables were, where our underground cables were. We stored that data in ArcGIS databases, SQL databases that fed ARC maps. So I told my attorney that we could get location data and I could prove to you that she chased me to work. So after my attorney made fun of her for having a picture of the back of my car, he said, remember, this is in front of Rakow in March, Dusty's friend. I didn't know it. They were friends. My attorney said, Miss Miller, would you consent to us, or you may have said, Mr. Wellhead, getting a subpoena for your cell phone location information so we can show just where, and boom, Rakow objected immediately when he understood what my attorney Paul asked for. Rakow looks so much like Brett Kavanaugh and gives off that rapey Kavanaugh feel, it's not even funny. And that's who objected. Dusty Miller standing in the courtroom, the assistant district attorney standing in the courtroom, and they're trying to take my freedom by way of a bond revocation. And Dusty is abjectly lying, objectively lying, incontrovertibly lying. And I could prove it with cell phone location data. My attorney asked for that, and before he could finish asking the question, Rakow stopped him. If the data had been gotten, I don't know that I would have been able to do it since I was the defendant, but we could have hired an expert to animate our travel and shown that she chased me. No question. Rakow stopped it. This is the state's star witness who would have been caught in probably aggravated perjury, intentional perjury with malice, if there's such a thing, to take my freedom for up to a year, because this is March. The trial didn't happen for another December, for another several months in December of that year. Okay, so he didn't revoke my bond. This sounds like a win, but it's not. And Rakow knows this because he's protecting Dusty. Okay. April, May, June goes by, all these months. We set a trial date for these misdemeanors, which is November 5th, 2007, a year after I was arrested. We had had a pretrial hearing before then in October, about 3 weeks before November 5th, where we went over all the evidence we were going to use. And weirdly odd, Rakow was not the judge overseeing this pretrial motions hearing, which is common, that hearing. It's where motions in limine are filed and everything's ironed out to get ready for the trial. Rakow's not there, and the excuse was he was unavailable. But the trial was set for November 5th. So then, I was on yet another attorney in October. Then on the day of the trial, I show up at the Rockwall County Courthouse. My then attorney, who quit that day, showed up, was there. She actually was there before me. Me and a few of my family members walk into the courthouse. We walked, I think it was on the second floor. We walk up to the courtroom, and my attorney walks out, and 50 or 60 jurors are there. They had already been impaneled, or the jury pool had been notified to show up. We hadn't weeded them out yet. And Rakow's still the judge. And my attorney walks out of the courtroom and says, well, the trial's been postponed for a month. And Rakow has recused himself, citing personal affiliation with Dusty Miller. And I'm resigning as your attorney, and I gave notice to the court. This was my third attorney by then. I think I was on attorney 5 by December 5th. And one of the sources of contentions with every attorney I had was file a goddamn notice of recusal or motion of recusal for these dickheads. They just refused. They thought, oh, you're crazy. They were saying that you're overreacting. Well, by March, I knew that she had, she's having sex with minors. And I told the ADA that, told my attorney that. They just ignored it. They didn't care. The attorney that had told me that the court had been delayed and Rakow had recused, I showed her 1 or 2 nights of the video and she saw it. So she knew it was there. In fact, she caught something I didn't catch, but she saw it. I didn't care. And the ADA, you would think that when someone finds second-degree aggravated sexual assault, weapons, non-consensual sex, minors, and it's on video, the ADA didn't see the video. You'd think when you report that to them, they'd take notice. But I assume Dusty knew this ADA. She did know Galen Ray Sumrow and she did know David Rakow. So on that day, I realized David Rakow made a decision in favor of Dusty in March that he should not have made because he should have recused his fucking dirty self the first time he caught wind that Dusty Miller was a witness in his trial, in front of him. He can't say that he didn't know Dusty was the state witness, because in March, she's the one who stood up and lied and said that I chased her war. I assume judges know who all's involved when they first get within the first week or so of being assigned a case so that they can recuse. That's how it works that's how it's supposed to work and mostly works in normal cities, counties, not Rockwall. So I didn't win in March by not being detained. Not only did I lose, I outed David Rakow as a dirty son of a bitch. He knows it. Otherwise, he kept on as a judge until November. He made 40 or 50 jurors, good, upright citizens of Rockwall, drive to the courthouse knowing he was going to send them home for a month. This may seem petty. I've since gotten a grad degree in political science, so I know public administration and I know things like the administration of justice, how that practically works, the logistics of all this, and things that you think through whenever you try to do good democracy and do good government. Putting innocent, unknowing people at risk by having them drive someplace frivolously, as I said, may seem petty, but what if one of them had been in an accident and was killed? Rakow knew that they weren't going to serve their duty, do their duty that day. He could have stopped them from coming. He should have recused a year earlier, but he didn't. That's David Rakow. And remember, he was not there the 3 weeks earlier in the October hearing, oddly, suspiciously. So I can't say I'm not in his mind, thank God. I don't think like him. But one has to wonder if he didn't show up in October because he can't put his name on what's going to be allowed and what's not allowed in the trial. By the way, we went to trial December, a month later, December 5th. The state of Texas, for 2 misdemeanors. The state of Texas had 15 cops. They had 16 witnesses on their witness list. 15 cops and Dusty Miller. One of the cops was another Texas Ranger, Chris something, another little thin-skinned bitch. They didn't call him, but I had 2 people, me and my youngest daughter. and I beat the fuck out of the state of Texas. Of course, I was not guilty. The jury spent 15 minutes deliberating. The attorney I finally did go to trial with, David Rakow, out of Rockwall, I think he's still practicing. I recommend him to my dying breath. David Rakow, David Roth, R-O-H-L, Roth, David Roth. Kind of a guy about my height, 5'7", 5'8", incredibly smart. But I met with him for 40 total minutes, 2 days before the trial. That's it. I got 2 weeks before trial and didn't have an attorney. And a judge appointed me one. Not Rakow, but another one that was filling in for Rakow after Rakow recused. A judge who came out of retirement who couldn't stay awake. He said, I had the money to hire an attorney. I'd been searching for one. But nobody wanted to mess with Rockwall. Everybody was scared. So he assigns me a local attorney, David Rakow, and I took the stand. My daughter took the stand. And actually, one of the state's witnesses turned into what's called a hostile witness. She couldn't decide whether or not to testify on my behalf or against me, or on the state's behalf or against the state. She was completely confused. It was my daughter's mother. But the second day of trial, the jury was sent to deliberate and lunch at the same time, which was 12 o'clock. They came back at 1 with a verdict. May have been 1:15. Anyway, it was 15 minutes of deliberation after lunch is what they spent. When we were doing voir dire, one of them was a young tax attorney, sort of a disinterested millennial type. I said, yeah, get him. He's not a criminal lawyer. He's a millennial. He had that attitude, and he knows some amount of the law. He knows beyond a reasonable doubt. Many people will tell you don't go to trial with a lawyer. I say do, if you can find that perfect kind of niche. And there was a teacher, and my mother was a retired teacher and honest, and so I knew that the teacher would be honest, a female. There were only 6 jurors too. So 12 jurors, it's harder to convict or be exonerated. 6 is harder than 12. Your numbers, the likelihood of being exonerated or convicted is higher with 12. 6 is harder. Not guilty. Unanimous. So that's why David Rakow is a dirty motherfucker. And I don't have any animus toward him. I don't care. Dirty judges are a dime a dozen. Now he's a district judge. I think the 439th district in Texas. He's just another dirty judge. My divorce attorney in Collin County was dirty, Judge Rush. I have no animosity towards him either. They're just every day doing dirty little things, whether they're involved in hiding deviant sexual predators like Dusty Broadfoot, or they're just doing day-to-day, letting innuendos fly during trial that wind up convicting someone. What Rakow did was not in a vacuum. He was protecting Dusty, and by then, especially in March, he knew that I had discovered what Dusty was doing and I had been reporting it. Because I went on the internet then. The difference between then and now is I covered the details of the crimes against me. Nobody cares about me. Not then, they're not going to care now. I don't expect you to. But people in a community do care about crimes against minors, sex crimes especially. It seems like every other day Law and Crime Network does a segment on a teacher, a 20-something-year-old teacher who gets caught having sex, raping one of their high school students. That's basically Dusty. She was 27. She was a little tart. She looked like a whore, and fake boobs. She wasn't smart enough to be a teacher, but she did trick her and her husband, rape minors in their garage before I knew her, and then she continued to after I moved in without me knowing, and recorded herself doing it. And that's what I'm offering a $250,000 reward for. It's serious. And don't take the negative impact that comes from those types of crimes lightly. I've lived with this for 20 years, and it's ruined my life since it changed it, and not in the better. not for the good. It negatively impacted my kids. It negatively impacted my parents. One of my grandmothers was still alive when Dusty made the false allegations. That negatively impacted her. So it's a generational negative clusterfuck for victims of the kinds of crimes that Dusty does. Completely changes lives. The statutes of limitations last forever. They do not expire for the crimes that Dusty committed. Probably for the crimes Tony Corsi committed too. This isn't to solve, this $250,000 is not for Tony Corsi. He may have information, and if he does, he could send a tip and receive the $250,000. I don't think he does. Or he may. But the $250,000 is offered to bring Dusty Broadfoot to justice. And by doing so, it brings a lot of closure for a lot of people, justice for a lot of people. It brings Dusty to justice. It makes Rockwall a safer place. And because of the bizarre, batshit crazy response I got from Galen Ray Sumrow's district attorney's office, I'm not contacting District Attorney Culpepper. She came in after Sumrow was removed from office. This is an hour and 3 minutes. I need to wrap this up. Sumrow was sentenced, lost his license, and left. He was removed from being Rockwall County District Attorney. I think Culpepper was appointed somehow by someone in the state. Then she has been winning elections ever since. She could prosecute this. I mean, she could investigate this. I'm not going to her with the information. To be honest, I'm too gun shy. I'm terrorized of law enforcement because you cannot trust the government, especially the police. I'm formally educated in political science. I just finished a grad program last May at 59 years old. So I don't give this opinion lightly. I know how government works. I don't have a law degree, but I know how the law works. And I know how it's supposed to work. So if Culpepper cares and wants to make her community safer, if someone tips her off about this, she needs to send an email to the tip line. Or she needs to contact the TAAS, whatever, the Texas Association of Sexual Assault Survivors, whatever they're out of Austin. She needs to come at me from a different source and show good faith. Because she has a duty to prosecute these things. If I get a tip from someone who does know the details, it's not law enforcement, I'm, of course, taking it to Culpepper. But if she finds out through some other method, some other means or source, and wants to do anything about it, I mean, I'm half kidding, but I'm just not responding to the police. They're just too... A monopoly on power is a very dangerous thing. And I'm not going to engage with that until I know their good faith. Hence, $250,000 for help solving these crimes. It's worth it. The email is on the Substack, scottwellhite.substack.com. You can get to the email through the YouTube channel, Justice for Victims of Dusty. It's titled Justice for Victims of Dusty Broadfoot. The handle is Justice for Victims of Dusty. And that's the email address. Justice for, F-O-R, Victims of Dusty @gmail.com. If you know anything, please send the tip to that email address. And thanks.